Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Doug, are there any public speakers?
Yes, sir. We have two public speakers, the first being Jason Pinero.
Good afternoon, everyone. On my 31st birthday, and having some breaking news to tell you guys. Governor Cuomo is asking the MTA to reduce the fares on Long Island Railroad during the summer of hell. So I hope that this is considered in the Finance Committee, because this is breaking news as we speak. And second of all, we should invest more in our network that is falling into pieces. And people like James Riello and Andrew Soul last month hided themselves like cowards to the speakers like me. I will tell them that on my birthday, nobody should be hiding but answering questions and doing the work that was assigned to. Because if they don't do the job that is assigned to, they should step down. And meanwhile, let's not do like Mr. X will say back in his days, money is thrown away. Let's invest our money where it belongs. And this saga will continue.
Thank you. Next speaker would be Murray Bowden.
Among the major financial news this week was the fact that the major auto companies are not competing with each other anymore. They're competing against Apple and Google, because Apple and Google are advanced in the auto-driving car, self-driving cars. If you watched the basketball games recently, the major ads were for cars that park themselves. You took your hands off the steering wheel and boom, 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 the car was in the parking space. Neil, you mentioned this morning PTC. PTC is a connected system through computers and through cables and everything else. The trains are the only system that don't have an auto stop system. And part of the reason is that the investment in PTC has been so enormous, they can't stop it. Now, these cars drive themselves without any connection to any computer. They park themselves, they go around cities by themselves, they go around college campuses by themselves. Why can't the trains of the Long Island Railroad and Metro-North stop themselves? How do you stop an investment and change the culture? I spoke before about Governor Cuomo saying take over Penn Station because it's our system. I spoke at the last meeting about New York City DOT and Bridges and Tolls taking over control of the markings and the signage of the road because it's New York City's economy. Finance is the money spent, money wasted on positive train control, and I have no idea how to address that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the public speakers.
Thank you. Now we have the approval of the May 22nd minutes. May I please have a motion, second, and a vote? Minutes to approve? All those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. Doug, can you take us through the work plan?
There's no change to the work plan. So next is Budget Watch. This month we're going to be focusing on operating results through May and subsidy cash results through June. Starting with May operating results, passenger revenues were $11.5 million below budget in May, and that increased the unfavorable year-to-date variance to $39.6 million. May results were partially impacted by unseasonably cool and wet weather, particularly over the Memorial Day weekend. The year-to-date variance also reflects adverse weather during the first quarter, in particular the impact of the Stella winter storm in March. We've also had lower bus ridership at New York City Transit and MTA Bus. Commuter revenue was slightly unfavorable for both the month and year-to-date. Moving to toll revenue, that was unfavorable in May, reflecting lower average toll due to higher Easy Pass usage, which reduces the average toll. It is now unfavorable year-to-date slightly. Moving to expenses, preliminary expenses in May were $15 million favorable, and that increased the year-to-date favorable variance to $154 million, or 3.1%. While MTA-wide energy costs and health and welfare rates at New York City Transit are driving some of this favorable result, a lot of the variance does appear to be timing related. Within those favorable expense totals, however, were overtime expenses for the month that were $11.9 million, or 19.2% unfavorable, primarily the result of higher overtime at New York City Transit. Year-to-date overtime results, which also reflect the impact of Stella in March, have been $32.7 million, or 10.4% unfavorable. Moving to debt service, those costs were favorable for the month, partially the result of the reversal of last month's pre-funding initially scheduled for May, which we talked about last month. More importantly, year-to-date debt service costs are running favorable due to lower budgeted variable interest rates, and we also had a favorable $32 million timing variance from 2016. We're going to move to subsidies now. Receipts in June did not follow the recent patterns that we had been reporting. They still are unfavorable for the month and year-to-date. Total subsidies through June were unfavorable by $73 million. Most of that is from real estate transaction tax collections, which are now $84 million unfavorable, and the remaining subsidies were favorable by $11 million collectively. I'm going to talk about the individual subsidies now. PMT receipts were $26 million unfavorable in June, which reduced the favorable year-to-date variance to only $21 million, or 2.7%. We think some of that might be timing. We still are running favorable in that category. If you read Budget Watch, we reported poor MTA aid receipts, and we really think that's timing. The day after that number closed, we got an $18 million collection, and we are only $19 million unfavorable for the period, so that we're not too worried about that now. PBT, Petroleum Business Tax receipts for June were $11.8 million, or 25.9% favorable. I've talked about this before, but those receipts are very hard to predict, and they go all over the place, so it's really hard to draw inferences in terms of seasonality. But overall, we're $10 million favorable year-to-date in that category. Last is real estate transaction taxes. They had been running unfavorably for 4 consecutive months. They were on target for the month of June. However, they are aided by a single large transaction, which accounted for 21% of the month's collection. So without those receipts, we probably would have had another poor month, meaning 5 straight months. So that's something we are concerned about. So I've given you a lot of ups and downs. I'm going to try to summarize Budget Watch to the best of my ability. Sure, sir.
Do you have an answer why you think it's trending in the negative for the last 4 months, and where you think it's going for the remainder of the calendar year?
In terms of the real estate?
Yeah, and is there anything we can do about it now to avoid a further?
Well, there's nothing we can do about the collections, right? But we can, for the July plan, we will be accepting those. We're pretty much committed to the fact that we'll be significantly bringing down those real estate projections, not only this year, but going forward to the best of our ability. So the plan that we present in July will have to adjust for that. And we have different strategies we'll be using to do so.
Do you have a reason why it's dropped, or it's?
Bob, you talked about this last month, but
Yeah, I think we're not seeing the large transactions that we had seen over the last couple of years. And I think that has much to do with foreign money not coming in at the same pace that it was before. And so there was Russian money coming in, Chinese money coming in. If that does not, pick back up, I think the trend that Doug is suggesting will continue. So,
Doug, did you mention the PMT in your report?
Yeah, we've been running favorably, and we were unfavorable this month. Some of that being timing, but we do think that we're a little unfavorable, but we're still good on a year-to-date basis. We will be reforecasting that as well. So that's probably going to offset a little bit of the unfavorable real estate. Yeah. So just to summarize, we think that we're still netting out slightly positive year-to-date. So on the positive side, we've had some lower spending for operations. Some of that, though, I caution, is timing, as I've mentioned, so that could erode. We've had some favorable debt service costs, modestly favorable on the PMT and PBT. The negative side, as has been reported at the operating agency committees, we've had unfavorable passenger revenue. B&T was unfavorable this month for the first time. And again, we have the real estate that we talked about. So this month we're redoing all the forecasts, and in July we'll get back to you with an updated mid-year forecast and financial plan. Sure. Question? Yeah.
Can you remind me what the percentage is for the real estate tax? What percent is it?
Well, there's different taxes, but if we're talking about the real property tax, that would be a 1% fee or tax on those large commercial transactions. Yeah.
Bob or Doug, this is mostly for you. We're mostly affected by macroeconomic trends in terms of labor and employment as opposed to micro, given the way our business works. And I'm both seeing Budget Watch and looking at slide 107 of our 145-page hymnal. Just looking at the revenue passenger trends, it feels like we're past the apex of the marketplace, and we're starting to see a slide downward. Just looking again, I'm looking at page 107. You see the red line inexorably heading month after month after month relative to two other annual periods in the negative direction. And I ask you, not maybe necessarily right now, but just to come back to us, because again, if we're affected by macroeconomic trends and we're a very large aircraft carrier that doesn't turn very quickly, I get nervous about these trends, and all the little pieces you're talking about give me some early warning concern about where the macroeconomic situation is going. Not that we can affect that, but we can always be prepared for it. So I just want to lay that at your feet, because I look at the various trends and see 1-2% downs in different categories, and that just gets me thinking about what could be around the corner.
Yeah, we'll address that at the July plan.
Finance Watch is, sorry about that. Finance Watch is next. Pat McCoy will take us through that.
Thanks, Doug. Finance Watch appears on page 22 of Director's Desk this afternoon. First, we want to report that in connection with the rating of an upcoming band that we'll be pricing next week, the bond anticipation note, Fitch Ratings issued an upgrade of the credit from A to AA-. That's a 2-notch upgrade, and it relates to the fact that they are looking at the transportation revenue credit through a new public sector revenue supported debt criteria that was just published earlier this month. So we were very pleased to report that. I sent the press release out to you, and we just received the report this morning, so that'll be coming out as well, so you'll see the full report of what they had to say. So a few transactions to report. On May 25th, we remarketed $82.5 million of MTA dedicated tax fund bonds, and these are floating rate notes that were competitively bid. The winning bid was submitted by Bank of America Merrill Lynch. It was SIFMA plus 45 basis points. Next, in the same vein, the dedicated tax fund variable rate refunding bonds 08A1, the prior letter of credit provider RBC, we replaced them with a new letter of credit through TD Bank NA, and TD Securities will serve as remarketing agent. And we just priced those initially last week. The initial rate set was 72 basis points for that. Again, so our variable rate portfolio continues to be working well. Next, as I noted, we have $700 million of bond anticipation notes coming to market next week for competitive bidding, and we'll do these again through our traditional process, allowing wide participation from large and small firms through tranches of up to $25 million, and so we'll report on those when they're finally issued next month. We also are preparing to issue $500 million of transportation revenue green bonds, 2017B. These will take out a bond anticipation note that's coming due on August 1st. These will be senior managed by Citigroup, one of our rotating senior managers, service disabled veteran-owned firm Drexel, MBE firm Blaylock Van, and WBE firm Stern Brothers. And so we'll price those bonds on June 28th and 29th in the market. And then lastly, we have a fuel hedge to report. Our monthly hedge was issued on May 30th. This was for 2.9 million gallons of ULSD, and the winning bid was submitted by Goldman Sachs J. Aaron at an all-in price of $1.61 per gallon. And again, this was up for competitive bidding, and our other active counterparties participated in that. Happy to take any questions if there are any. Sir?
Pat, is the upgrade of the bonds going to be translated into interest rate savings?
You know, that we certainly hope to generate some additional investor excitement and interest in the issue. It's really hard to gauge if that one single upgrade will generate into basis point savings. But I think to the degree that investors, see a positive development, I think they would hopefully show interest in the bond deal.
Okay. We're now moving to MTA headquarter and all agency items, and we have 3 action items. The first action item is the electricity transmission congestion contracts, which can be found on page 32, and Jerry Page is going to discuss that for us.
Okay. We're requesting the board to approve authorizing the New York Power Authority to purchase, on behalf of MTA, certain historic fixed-price transmission congestion contracts, which are known as HFPTCCs. Okay, excuse me. Certain historic fixed-price transmission contracts, which are known as HFPTCCs, through a process mandated by the New York Independent System Operator, which is the entity that runs the grid in New York State. More specifically, we're asking the MTA to approve the payment by MTA to NYPA of $11.316 million for a 1-year, 178 megawatt allocation of the upper path HFP TCCs, and $1.185 million for a 1-year, 178 megawatt allocation of the lower path HFP TCCs, and to delegate authority to the Chief Financial Officer to determine annually whether to continue to purchase some or all of these HFP TCCs for the remaining 9 years of the option. I do want to make one clarification to the staff summary. There's a statement that the MTA retains the right with respect to these HFP TCCs even if we don't continue to contract with NYPA for energy supply. Based on new information we received after the staff summary was released, it turns out that if we don't contract with NYPA, we'll still get the 2018 TCC allocation, but we do not have certainty that we would get an allocation in 2019 and beyond. In any case, the allocation determination is done on an annual basis. Nonetheless, we recommend going forward for the 2018 allocation period. Are there any
Any questions by any committee member? Motion, please. Second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Okay. The next item is the approval of owner-controlled insurance program, and we're requesting the MTA Board's approval to establish a not-to-exceed budget of $225 million and to execute necessary items to finalize the procurement of an owner-controlled insurance program, OSIP, for projects covering the balance of the 2015 to 2019 capital program and Sandy-related projects for New York City Transit, the Long Island Railroad, and Metro North, and the Small Business Mentor Program. So we're recommending that the MTA Board authorize MTA Risk and Insurance Management to A, permit Willis of New York to place the primary OSIP policies with STAR, B, permit Willis of London to place OSIP excess liability insurance policies with a consortium of underwriters, including Liberty Mutual Insurance Europe Limited, Aegis, Casualty Consortium 9224, AIG Europe Limited, and Aspen 4722. C, permit Willis of New York to place an OSIP railroad protective liability policy with STAR and OSIP builder's risk policy with the Westchester Fire Insurance Company within the budget constraints as set forth in the staff summary, and authorize FIMTEC to enter into a trust agreement with STAR to collateralize agency obligations under the primary OSIP policies. B, hire Helsman Management Services at Limit LLC as claims administrator. C, issue deductible reimbursement policies to cover the exposures due to self-insured retentions. And D, manage the safety claims and administrative expenses of the OSIP program.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
The last action item is the 2017 State Public Work Enforcement Fund Assessment, PWEF, staff summary, which appears on page 37. We are asking the board to authorize a sum of $4,763,000. $3.8 million of that represents the state assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Fund for the calendar year 2017. There's also $965,000, which represents the makeup for a 2016 underpayment. The number of this dollar amount is calculated at 0.1% of the value of public work construction contracts entered into. Monies are used by New York State to enforce prevailing wage legislation.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
Moving to report and information items, we have 4 report and information items. The first is the contract change order report for the first quarter of 2017, and that appears on page 38. Included within is the capital contract change order, which is also reported to the CPOC committee. And the next item is the information technology report, which will be presented by Sid Gelano.
Good afternoon. This is just an update to the Financial Committee on the status of the IT transformation. I'm sorry. So IT is driving savings by using resources more efficiently across the enterprise. In 2015, we took a 6% budget reduction. 2016, a 7%. In 2017, we gave a permanent cut of $1.6 million. We also gave some one-time costs based on some demand management, and what that is really looking at what each of the agencies were doing separately, making decisions to put things together and do them together or not to do them at all. So there was a one-time savings of $61 million, broken down as $36 million in 2015 and 16, $25 million in 2017. Total cost savings since consolidation of $107.9 million. one of the other big things we're doing is application rationalization. So when we started this exercise, we could have had 5 or 6 of the same type of applications, one running in each agency. So what we did is we took a look at our portfolio of applications, which totaled about 920. Out of that, we've reviewed 620 of those applications, and out of the 620, there's 230 potential candidates for rationalization. And what that means is, again, taking those applications, putting them together. Either we go out and we make a decision whether we're going to redevelop those in-house, or most of the time we like to see if we can find a commercial off-the-shelf product to do that. 19 of those applications have already been completed. And I just gave you a couple of examples. Some of the big ones, like enterprise asset management, today there's across the agencies, there's about 120 applications doing that, and we're going to bring it down to 1 or 2. Some of the other things we're doing is we're consolidating contracts.
Sid, how long will that take?
Oh, application rationalization, that's a real long time. I can tell you some of these applications are old, and you know, there's a whole business process review.
Define a real long time.
5, 6 years.
So give the committee a better understanding. If you had 145 applications and you're trying to get it down to 1 or 2, in a year from now, how many will there be? 100?
No. I would say conservatively, the larger applications, if we can get 10 done in a year, that would be a lot. I mean, let me give you an example.
How much of a savings it would be from 145 to 1 or 2 annually?
I can't answer that right now. I wouldn't have that.
Could you come back with an answer?
Yes, I can. Okay. So again, we're looking at the contracts. We've completed a bunch of them. A couple of examples: the Cisco contract. We now are Cisco shop across all the agencies. We will have one contract. Same thing with Microsoft. We moved Microsoft Office 360 in the cloud. Major accomplishments, as I just mentioned, we migrated to the cloud with our email. We did a PeopleSoft upgrade in 2016. Mobile ticketing went live for Long Island Railroad and Metro North in 2016. The Thin client, which we call alternate desktop solution at Transit, has been completed. The Beacon countdown clock for the B division, the proof of concept, was completed, and we're moving forward with getting that go live in 2017. We did a technology open house review for the enterprise this year. That was a success. And we continue to expand our cybersecurity and operations center and our abilities with cybersecurity. Some major initiatives, and these again multi-year initiatives, and it's just because of the size of the organization. We're replacing all our Windows 2003 servers. There's about 3,000 of them. We're taking that as an opportunity, again, to consolidate those servers, virtualize where possible. We're upgrading our desktops again. We just finished the Windows 7 upgrade. Now we're moving to the Windows 10 upgrade. And again, we're not going to be able to do that in a year. It's a multi-year exercise. One of the major things we're looking for some cost savings on is the data center optimization. We've got 5 major data centers. We're taking an opportunity to see what we can move into the cloud easily, and we just want to do that. What we can reconfigure without too much pain and move to the cloud, and then identify what will never go to the cloud, and then consolidate those data centers, hopefully into 1 or 2. And the last one is, as we finished this year, Transit's business network upgrade, we need to do the same thing for Metro North and Long Island Railroad. So our goals for 2017, we purchased a product called ServiceNow. This is going to be the brains of the IT department. It's going to track our service calls, our inventory. This is going to be the one place we go to get all the information. And it's the one place our customers are going to go to find out the status of their requests, their help desk tickets, and their applications. We're upgrading the PeopleSoft hardware and disaster recovery. Currently today, the disaster recovery for PeopleSoft is in Livingston Plaza. The main primary site is in 2 Broadway. We just think it's too close. We'd enter an MOU with the state to use their data center up in Albany, and we're in the process of building that environment. We continue, again, cybersecurity is real important to us with all the malware and the ransomware out there now. So we're spending a lot of time and energy again, upgrading our defensive capabilities. And we continue to develop dashboards. So our customers, we want our customers to know where we are with certain things. We want to be very transparent. So we work with our customers to say, what do you guys want to see from us? What are we doing? Some of the agency goals, again, to complete the B division countdown clocks this year. We're scheduled to go live this month with the R line, complete the business network at transit, and to complete our SCADA security reviews and report back on that. Again, some of our concerns is our ability to deliver on our service calls. We're averaging about 710 calls a day. We brought Gardner in, and they just completed a review on the techniques and what we're doing, and they've come with some recommendations that we will start implementing. We looked at staffing levels. We looked at what the staff was doing. We had Gardner actually shadow the staff, how they answered calls and stuff like that. So Gardner has a wealth of knowledge, and they're helping us try to resolve that. One of the issues I'm glad to say that we're seeing greater throughput on now is we were having a real hard time with recruiting, getting people, and we're working with HR. We did some new techniques. We're interviewing on weekends. We've had job fairs that have been successful. We're advertising and we're promoting the MTA brand, and we're also trying to put a development package in place for the existing staff. That concludes my presentation.
Sid, appreciate the update for the committee. I would just ask that since there's opportunities not only to save significant operating costs, but also improve efficiencies, right? Make us leaner, more efficient. Maybe one of the things the IT department should think about is creating like a genius competition that the governor's called for on some of these other things, and bringing the brightest minds of technology that actually exist here in New York, and see whether or not brainstorming with them might result in being able to move some of these things along quicker, faster, that would generate savings. And the other thing, we don't need to talk about it today, and I want to make sure it's done in an appropriate setting, that on cybersecurity, I want to make sure that there's close coordination and awareness by the appropriate federal and state law enforcement agencies, so they know what it is that the MTA is doing, what it has. They're comfortable that we have the right cybersecurity things in place, and they're aware of what they are.
Yes, we work with both the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security now. We're a member of their team, and so is MTA Police.
And I'd like to make sure that state police is looped in as well.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, Neil?
Thank you, Larry. IT is typically the space where, at least with most of my clients, we find ways to drive savings out. To Larry's point about efficiency, can you remind me of a couple of stats? One, what is our OpEx budget for IT annually? And two, is there, Bob, a target for IT savings for this next year as it contributes to your annual savings targets?
The OpEx, the CapEx, you mean, or the operating? The operating budget is roughly $173 million. The OpEx is about another $35 million. CapEx, excuse me.
Excuse me, the biggest savings that we're looking this year is related to EAM. I would say the investments that we're putting there, and I can't recall what that number is.
Well, we have a spend close to $100 million on implementing EAM.
Speaking to you.
And we're looking at that right now, but it's likely we're going to reduce that number significantly.
I think the number I saw was about 10 to 15 million, I think, on that.
Yeah, at a minimum. Yep.
Can you give simultaneous translation of what EAM is?
Enterprise Asset Management.
Thank you.
I would ask, and if it's up to our chair, if it's appropriate, I wouldn't mind seeing some of the high-level findings of Gartner on a $173 million line item and $130 million CapEx budget, if they have some views of where we stack relative to similar entities, high, low, et cetera. I'd be interested to see that as a presentation.
Sure, we have that.
Thanks, Larry. So are we undertaking a SOC 2 Type 2 audit on our data centers and our operations?
The IBM data center, IBM actually runs our data center in 2 Broadway, so there's an audit that's done every year. I think it's the SAS 70? SAS 70.
Okay. I think you may want to look into SOC 2 Type 2 as we talk about the security and the cybersecurity stuff, and it sounds like you're saying we rely on IBM's audit, but we have more than one data center, and you may want to look at that. It's been my experience that it can bring out material deficiencies the same way a GASB or GAP audit can on the financial front.
Okay, so I guess what we can do there is we have a contract, a multi-task contract that we're using for the SCADA, the train control systems. Stuff like we can have those vendors take it. Vendors like AECOM, ARINC, Parsons, we can have them take a look at it too. Okay.
Wherever you look at it, I mean, it's not a small undertaking, but it's, I think, an important one, becoming the sort of de facto standard for IT operations.
Right.
Okay. Third information item is the update on the procurement consolidation, which Wael Hibri will present to the committee.
Thank you, Doug. So our accomplishments in the last year since the last report is that we've reached an agreement with TCU December 2016. We've collaborated with the agencies to identify non-core categories. The consolidation of procurement at headquarters is for non-core categories, which do not include trains, buses, and track and signals. So it's areas that are common to all agencies. We've transferred all vacant positions from the agencies to headquarters. We've rolled out a portal for our vendors to be able to participate in our procurements. We've delivered $76 million in annualized savings over the next 5 years. We've rolled out the MTA Marketplace, which allows our employees to order office supplies as a first initiative without going to a paper process as they used to in the old days. And we've completed the PeopleSoft upgrade while we were working with TCU to achieve that labor agreement. Our biggest challenge right now is hiring. We have identified the Chief Procurement Officer, and an offer has been recently made. I spent an hour on the phone with the individual this morning, and things are looking favorable for a start date in about 4 to 6 weeks. All open positions have also been posted internally, and we've posted all represented and director level positions, both internally and externally. We've appointed 3 deputy CPOs, and we have an offer made to the 4th deputy chief procurement officer. We're waiting to hear back. From a summary point of view, out of a total of 113 positions today, we have only 38 positions filled at headquarters. We anticipate that we will transfer about 32 employees from New York City Transit and Long Island Railroad, which would leave us with about 43 positions that we would need to fill from the outside. Full staffing is expected by Q1 2018. If you take a look at the green bars, those would represent the filled positions, where the full bar would be our full staffing at 116. We expect to achieve steady state with our staffing level by February or in the first quarter 2018, and that would require a concerted effort, just like Sid talked about the concerted effort between IT and human resources. We're planning to do the same for procurement to make sure that we can speed the process along so that we can fill the vacancies.
Can you tell the Can you tell the committee, in terms of real terms, having that many vacancies, what does that mean in terms of, you know, moving procurements along, saving public dollars? There's no impact There is some impact. Where is the impact?
I'm covering most of your questions in
Okay.
subsequent slides. So our requisitions are trending, our backlog requisitions are trending upward at about 6% per month. So today I have 2,720 open requisitions, and those are increasing in an upward fashion. Our strategies for catching up is, first of all, filling all the vacancies, and where we cannot fill vacancies fast enough, we are budgeted and funded to hire consultants who will do most of the prep work to award the procurement, and the procurement will be awarded by a senior manager who's an employee or a director within the MTA procurement department.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morris. I get the impression that part of the problem here is we may not be paying competitive wages. Are we going to work on that seriously?
We are partnering with Bob and with Human Resources. The positions have been recently HAID, meaning recently evaluated. We hope that's competitive. We find that at entry level, whether it's a generational shift or whether it's a different marketplace, the tenure rate is about 3 years for someone who just started, because the private sector is able to pay significantly higher. The solution to that is to have a backlog or a pipeline of candidates who are waiting to come on board fairly quickly. We also have to learn to grow our own as well, and train people on our policies and procedures and do it that way. Our reliance on consultants today to achieve steady state, I was showing, would be about 26 consultants to get us where we want.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, the cost of consultants, how does that work out?
When we
make more sense to pay a higher wage that's more competitive than paying consultants.
Especially with the retention of knowledge, because consultants easy come, easy go, as you could see. So all of the training walks out of the door. When you add the pension and other benefits to it, it is very likely that the two prices will be somewhat similar, but we would not be comfortable having consultants do a lot of signature or authorization or award work that we would trust employees to do.
Let me make a suggestion based on looking at this chart. You have 2,700 open requisitions right now. I have no idea what that means. I don't know if anybody else on the committee, I don't know if they're big ones, little ones, whether or not they're holding up, progress in ordering critical items to maintain the subway system, whether it's signals, cars, whatever. You say you have a plan to reduce or eliminate the backlog, even though it will grow by 6% while you're trying to fill vacancies. You're not going to fill the vacancies, hopefully, if you're lucky, until sometime in the first quarter of next year.
Right.
So my suggestion is you need to come back to this committee with a plan to eliminate that backlog ASAP now. While I'm not thrilled about hiring consultants as opposed to having trained full-time employees, I think the reality is I'm equally as concerned about the backlog and it growing and how it will impact on agency operations. So I would like to see a plan that addresses eliminating that backlog, not in 6 to 12 months, but eliminating that backlog in the next 4 to 6 months. All right.
So the next slides may help answer some of your questions.
Pardon me.
Yes.
How are you going to select, from what pool are you going to select the consultants?
Let me go through the presentation and then we'll answer. I think some of the questions may be answered, not this specific one, but there are others that I'm able to answer. So the strategies for catching, first of all, zero backlog has never existed at the MTA, and while it's a laudable goal we want to all achieve, what we're looking at is a backlog of 2 months worth of work, which is about 1,300 requisitions, would be equivalent to where we are today. But the goal ultimately is to use the system, the platform we have, to get us even better than that and in a more responsive state to our customers. Absolutely. None of these requisitions are core requisitions for anything that touches track, signal, train, or bus. Those are for common products and items, from office supplies to tools to consulting services that we would procure and are consumed by all agencies, irrespective of which one.
Okay, I'm not going to belabor this right now because we've been running late. all afternoon, and I don't want to hold up the committee members.
Sure.
But I do want to have a follow-up conversation because 1,300 backlog, that still doesn't sound like an acceptable number to me. That might be, historically what the agency's trend, but I don't see why over 1,000 requisitions behind schedule is a goal that we should be satisfied with. So we'll have follow-up conversations on it.
So our strategies for catching up is to combine similar requisitions to minimize procurement actions and increase our buying leverage, to use the platform, use strategic sourcing on online bidding to execute as many electronically as possible, and to expand the MTA marketplace from just office supplies to MRO, which are hardware, tools, and so on, as well as information technology requisitions. So if we do not do any of these mitigations, which include at the bottom of the chart, you see 26 consultants coming in to help us, our trend will continue to reach 3,113, which has been well received by all of you or badly received by all of you. But with the black or orange line trending downward, by first quarter we'll be down to 1,340 requisitions. So what is the impact on our procurement actions? We expect to come to the MTA Finance Committee, headquarters does, with about 8 contracts requiring extensions to allow us to carry the workload that we have and the lack of staffing that we don't have. So out of an overall inventory of 325 to 350 contracts that we administer at headquarters, 2% of those would be up for extension, and we'll keep those extensions to a minimum in number and duration, and the quantity ordered will also keep that to a minimum. And so the annualized value or annualized spend on these 8 contracts will be $5.2 million. And in my briefing to you, Mr. Chairman, I'll make sure we detail those as well. I did not want to share them with the vending public because those vendors do not know we may be going for extensions. We have only one from Transit, which is really a software product that we will take up at headquarters. It would have come to the board anyway since it is a software license of a proprietary nature. And for Long Island Railroad, we have 12, but I expect a closer review will show that they are not because of consolidation, but because of other things. So we'll take a closer look at that. We've also implemented, because of recent investigations in procurement, we've implemented improved internal controls. The IG made several internal control recommendations, all of which have been accepted by the MTA, and we're working to put those in place. We just received the report a few days ago, Thursday or Friday last week. The MTA Chief Compliance Officer appointed a full-time compliance counsel who partners with me on both the procurement department, shared services, as well as IT. And we're doing an annual certification of security privileges in PeopleSoft, and that will be reviewed by MTA Audit as well. Additional internal control improvements have a review of all security privileges, make sure that there's separation of duties between individuals in procurement who can receive goods and order goods versus the ones who can actually carry out the procurement. All significant contracts and notices to proceed are now reviewed by MTA Legal prior to execution, and any enforced memos. There was a time when a memo to file was suspended under the prior leader. We enforced that back, and then every procurement will have a memo to file to ensure that the details of their procurement are memorialized. The signature authority of the CPO was lowered, and procurement actions above $1 million are now escalated to the Chief Operating Officer. All procedures are being updated with anticipated completion by December 2017. We have 1 completed as of now, 4 are almost ready, and the rest will be done by the end of the year. And again, notices to proceed will need to be followed by an executed contract, and if not, reported weekly to me to make sure that we are working diligently to close out the contract. And federal contracts will be reviewed by MTA Audit to ensure compliance. So our strategic priorities are to fill the vacancies, update our procedures, strengthen our internal controls, achieve steady state, and I'm very open to defining that as aggressively as possible, minimize our contract extensions, and increase our vendor participation through the portals, through self-service, increase the adoption of PeopleSoft functionality, which is not 100% there across the entire MTA, and expand the number of vendor catalogs in the marketplace, again, to reduce paper and reduce procurement actions. So the question previously was, where are we sourcing some of the consultants? We have awarded a lot of as-needed consulting contracts through many, many different firms that came to the board, I would say, between 9 and 12 months ago, and we are using that to hire consultants. I can provide greater detail later on. If the question is whether it's from KPMG or another firm, that is not the source of these consultants.
Question is, what process have you used to select them? Is there some process where they can compete, some process where they can come forward and make a showing?
The rates under which these consulting houses have offered us is based on a competitive process, and we've awarded, I believe, from memory, I think, consulting contracts or as-needed contracts to about 25 firms. The rates were competitively procured. When we put out a job description, we look at all of the resumes that come in. We pick the most qualified individuals within the range that was already competitively procured.
Thank you. What I would ask, though, as a follow-up, and I say to Bob and Doug, that one is, I think our goal and objective should be, there should be no backlog, not even 1,300. I just think that's way too high and unacceptable. I'd like to know, as well as maybe the other committee members would know, the average number of days of these backlogs. Is it 30 days, 2 days? Is it 90 days, 120 days? How long are these per each requisition? What's the average number of days before it's handled? The other thing is contract extensions. There should be 0 contract extensions. I don't know why we ever have any contract extensions. It's very simple. A contract has a defined period of time. Staff knows when that contract is set to expire. You have to back into it and say, whether it's an RFP or a competitively bid, we have to start the process 18 months early, 24 months early, 12 months early, in order to make sure that we have a recommendation to the board for approval just before that contract expires. I just think it's terrible optics, terrible practice, you know, I'm very focused on our contracting procedures and our procurement procedures. I really think going forward in the future, we need to do a deep dive in reviewing how the MTA as an agency does contracting and procurement. I think a lot of things that we do are archaic. They're not in the year 2017. They don't reflect it now. I think there are ways to save money, make things faster, quicker, more efficient, streamline it, create more competition. These got to be the goals and objectives of all of us, right? And, you know, I'm going to be like, you know, along, I'm sure, with other members, like a dog with a rag in its mouth, and keep pressing and pushing for better results and better answers going forward, because I really think our contracting and procurement system needs a colonoscopy, no pun intended or whatever intended, but it needs a review. It needs a close examination. But let's keep going. Thank you.
Okay, the final report and information item is a draft of the independent accountant's final review report of MTA financial statements for the 3 months ended March 31st, 2017. It will be presented and voted on at the audit committee meeting later today. And next, again, we have Weil now with the procurements for headquarters and the agencies.
For headquarters, there are 7 procurements for a grand total of $38.7 million. One is a non-competitive procurement for a not-to-exceed total of $36.75 million. We're requesting board approval to award an all-agency personal services contract to New York State Industries for the Disabled, NYSID, a New York State preferred source, to provide as-needed temporary personnel services for 5 years effective January 1, 2017 through December 31st, 2021. Services are rendered on an as-needed, as-requested task basis and are not guaranteed. Individual tasks and funding are approved within each agency prior to any service request, MTA and all participating agencies do not guarantee any level of work to be performed under this contract. This procurement is to be funded by each agency's operating budget. 6 are competitive procurements for a total of $2,025,000. Arts for Transit projects at 4 New York City Transit subway locations on the 8th Avenue line at $350,000 each for a total of $1.4 million. AFT is to provide technical design, fabrication, crating, storage, delivery, and oversight of the installation materials. That's on page 47 of your board book. We're requesting the board approve a personal service contract to E.B. Jacobs LLC in the not-to-exceed amount of $125,000, including a 15% contingency, to develop and as-needed administer an MTA-specific, validated, job-related, fair, objective, and reliable examination for MTA police officers applying for promotion to the ranks of sergeant and lieutenant for the MTA Police Department for a not-to-exceed amount of $125,000 for 48 months from July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2021. We're also requesting that the board approve a supplement to a previously board-approved personal services contract in the amount of $500,000, along with a 6-month time extension from July 1, 2017 to December 31, 2017, to continue required actuarial services as mandated by law for the pension plans covering various groups of employees of the MTA agencies. In addition, adding a special project service to recalculate retirement benefits. Fees charged for actuarial services will be paid through the pension plan trust funds and participating agencies' operating budgets. MTA HQ Procurement is currently preparing to release a new RFP for actuarial consulting services for pension and other post-employment benefit plans to be awarded by the end of 2017.
Yeah, it's not because of the materiality of the amount. The NYPD
exam.
I thought NYPD was totally under the control of the City of New York.
MTA police officers.
Okay, MTA police officers are separate and distinct.
Are under the jurisdiction of MTA headquarters.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
How does this mesh? How does NYPD and MTA police?
We will have to get you a good answer from a subject matter expert, but it's a completely separate police force.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm ignorant. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Completely separate police forces. The New York City Police Department, though, is responsible for policing the subway system.
Right.
The MTA the MTA Police Department polices our railroads and other facilities.
Understood. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Albert?
Yes. On page 47, there's it's AFT for 4. I guess it's the Enhanced Station Initiative. There's only 3 stations listed there. What is the 4th station?
All right.
I assume it's 110th.
Get the error and get back to you.
I'm sure it's 110, but.
You turn your mic on, please.
163rd, 110th, 86th, and 72nd.
Yeah, 110th's missing.
I believe 110th was omitted. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Veronica?
Why would there be a 15% contingency in the E.B. Jacobs?
So, retroactive wage increases have impacted the wages earned for certain employees that are covered by our pension plans. And depending on individuals seeking an estimate of what their pension payout would be should they retire in year 1 versus year 2 versus year 3, there may be some contingency for MTA headquarters to be able to utilize to issue the estimates to the appropriate employees upon request.
But this is for services related to criteria for promotion. I think that's being asked.
Are we talking about?
Yes.
We're talking about the police procurement.
Yeah.
I will get you an answer on the contingency. Sorry.
There are no other questions. Do we have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed? Doug?
Okay, there's a break in the procurement action because for Metro North, there's one action item requesting that the MTA Board authorize a public hearing with regard to proposed permanent service changes at Harlem Line stations in the Bronx to be effective in October 2017.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Okay, back to YL with now agency procurements.
For New York City Transit and MTA bus operations, there are 7 procurements with a grand total of $77.676 million. One is a non-competitive procurement with a total of $2.482 million for testing and evaluation services of a new product and technology. 6 are competitive procurements. One is jointly with MTA Capital Construction, and one is with MTA Bus. For contract modifications, 4 with requests to use the RFP process for a total of $75.194 million.
Questions? Motion? Sure.
I'm reading this again, and I'm still trying to figure out the Michelin issue.
Still trying to figure out the Michelin issue, okay? It says, as far as I can understand, that Michelin, the South Carolina discriminates in some fashion, but notwithstanding that, we're okay with that.
I can address that.
That's how I'm reading this summary. Go ahead.
Okay.
I think I know the answer to this one, unless somebody from Metro North wants.
Hello. There are 6 discriminatory jurisdictions as part of the Omnibus Procurement Act, which is put forward by New York State. South Carolina happens to be one. When they do government procurements, they have evaluative credits that they advance or advantage that state over other states. In this particular case, since we're going for a very large tire procurement, we've had over the years limited competition, we've asked for a waiver of that discriminatory jurisdiction reading, which would preclude us as a New York State agency from doing business with them. We believe it's in our best interest to cultivate competition and allow Michelin to test their tires in our environment so that we can have competition for Goodyear, who's been a long-term incumbent, even though we've had competitive procurements in the past.
Okay, so if I understand, we would like somebody to bid with Goodyear. We can't find anybody to bid with Goodyear, and so we're going to South Carolina, where we otherwise would not be allowed to find somebody to bid with Goodyear. Is that the end result of all of this?
That's exactly it. And we believe it's in our best interest because, one, they have good products. They sell their products to other transit agencies. They have a leasing program, which we engage in.
Right.
And on top of that, we believe that it's the appropriate thing to do to allow them to test it, because this is a pretty daunting environment in terms of when you start to roll out tires across all of our depots.
But here's my problem. Let's assume we like their goods. Now we're going back to South Carolina.
That could be the case.
So what's the point of having South Carolina on the list to begin with?
Well, when we don't have significant issues where we have robust competition, then we wouldn't be asking for the waiver. But in this particular case, over the past probably 3 to 4 procurements, we've only seen limited competition. And again, this is something we take to heart. We don't just come in with...
No, listen, we all take it to heart, okay? Mm-hmm. We'd all prefer not to have to do business with an entity located in a state which is on the discrimination list. Otherwise, there was no point in New York State passing the law in the first place. They passed the law for some purpose.
Steve, before I go to defer to Paul, you said limited competition versus no competition. So
That's
is
right.
it no competition or it's limited? And if it's limited, who else is competing against Goodyear?
We did a significant outreach to the contracting community, and the only 2 companies that had a large enough tire service or tire leasing program was this company and Bridgestone Firestone.
Bridgestone was recalcitrant with regard to accepting terms and conditions that we had and wanted the ability to terminate the contract at any time. So the answer to your question is this is the only competitor that we've had and we've identified through extensive outreach to Goodyear.
Could you just explain the nature of the discrimination problem that they've got in South Carolina?
The state allows for evaluative benefits for in-state contractors as opposed to companies that come out of state. It's a state issue. It's not a, I'll say, it's not a Michelin issue, right, which is sort of a bit of a different issue, right? If we would, this is an issue where the state has promulgated these evaluative criteria, and Michelin happens to be domiciled in South Carolina. It doesn't mean that they actually contributed to that particular law.
Okay.
Let me make a suggestion. If committee members still have some concerns or questions, can we just pull this out and table it for the next meeting? So this way, if members have any other questions or concerns on this issue, they can be answered and taken up at the next board meeting? Is this a time sensitive?
Well, let me answer that. Just at the time sensitive, we would like to undertake this test and evaluation as soon as possible, because if we don't, it'll be a limited period of time that we're able to actually evaluate their product. It's a two-way street. We at Department of Buses want to be able to see this Michelin product in performance.
But Steve, we have a board meeting in July, so I don't think...
I have no problem going forward. If I just want to answer, assuming you like what they sell, for lack of a better term, I can't make it any other way to come.
I got it.
You would have to come back to this board for a full contract with them.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, in the meantime, what we can do, and we've done this long time ago, we can also reach out and have Michelin approach South Carolina the extent to which they can maybe dumb down or change some of their policies with regard to discriminatory actions.
I have a better idea. Why don't you talk to Michelin about opening a headquarters here in New York?
I was going to say the same
We've already had that conversation.
Well, if you would like, some of us will encourage them even harder.
Yes.
But keep going.
Fair enough.
No, I think the point is, you beat my word.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But I think the point is, obviously, well, let me phrase it this way. We would assume Michelin wants our business, otherwise they wouldn't have bid.
We believe that Michelin is definitely interested in this service.
So as a result of that, we should make sure Michelin knows that there are still significant issues that this board will have to wrestle with should they come to that point.
I'll do that personally.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Well, first we're testing them to see if the tires work. If the tires work,
yeah, we'll get there.
Then we'll have a different conversation.
We'll have a different conversation. Thank you, Steve.
I'm trying to lure them in.
I understand.
Get them to do business here first. But your point is taken. Absolutely.
You understand our concerns.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And also, good catch, Mr. Pally. With that, any other questions? Motion? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, we have bridges and tunnels. There are 6 competitive procurements for contract modifications, 3 with requests to use the RFP process for a grand total of $35 million, $102,065. For FEMTAC, there are no items for FEMTAC. This concludes the procurements.
Questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
Next, we have real estate.
Hi, everybody. As you know, the chat not working.
It's not on.
How's that? Okay. As you know, the MTA has devised a mitigation strategy to address impacts of the Amtrak work at Penn Station and with park and ride facilities for bus service and ferry service. The role of the real estate department in that effort has been to secure control of the various facilities that are required for parking and so on. So we have a late entry to our agenda, which I believe is in front of you. With that, there are a total of 4 staff summaries. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Just one. How were these prices negotiated?
In the first instance, with an effort to have no charge at all, and then ultimately, under some time pressure, acquiescing in what we understood to be standard pricing.
Jeff, we should mention that with regard to the temporary park and ride agreement, MTA and LIR does intend to seek reimbursement from Amtrak for all of these costs. So,
absolutely right.
I find it interesting that the Racing Association waives the fees that the state parks does not. I find that interesting in this little list. I assume the same conversation was taken with state parks that was had with the Racing Association.
I will say this. I think in this instance, it may be that that discussion was not had at the highest levels, and I imagine that it could be revisited.
Thank you.
Mr. Paley, you're on a roll today, and we'll make sure that we get to the bottom of state parks.
That's what I figured.
As I say, our objective was to get this in front of you so that we could proceed as needed. Thank you.
Any questions? Motion? Second? Vote? All in favor? Opposed? We need a motion for the Finance Committee now to convene an executive session. Can I have a motion to do so? Second? Those in favor? Okay, we'll go into executive session quickly and come back and adjourn. Okay, can I have a motion for the Finance Committee to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? Committee is adjourned. Thank you.